leather jackets or imitation leather, because so many people like them. So many people liked the leather jackets. It's just deciding what would go on there. So some people just wanted older women rock, some wanted things like Only Men Grow Old on screen. So we'll just be, I've been collecting loads and loads and loads of leather jackets from charity shops, and we'll be branding them, like just burning into them like the ones that you saw. Yeah.
Definitely cool. Although if ever you decide to do this, we're just saying I'll be bringing, I'll save up, the jewellery this lady's advertising, and the one about aging on screen, about women aging. I think it was like detox and botox. Those are my favourite.
Okay,
So.
I'll give you my card, and then if you want to get in touch with me, I'll certainly let you know when we actually do it.
Cool.
Yeah, I didn't come here to flog things. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Sorry, but I loved your poems, and I think they're the kind of poems that I wanted to almost like put you into slow-mo so that I could get the images into my head, because it was like this flow of amazing imagery in each one. I was like, I haven't quite got it, it's gone. So have you published anything? Can I go and read your poems all right?
So I do post some poems on my Instagram account,
Yeah.
but it's quite complicated because with Instagram it's also quite sensitive, because I know that my family can read those poems. I found that, so the ones I performed today, for example, I wouldn't necessarily show them. I do want to have them published though, so that's what I'm working towards. I'm trying to finish my novel and then hopefully get the poems out shortly after, but we'll see. But I can share the poems with you if you're interested. If you find me on social media, I reply to people within minutes. So.
Alright. Like on Twitter, because that's the only one I do.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Anyone else? No?
Can you tell us? So can you tell us a bit about the novel?
So the novel, it's I was experimenting with plot style a little bit. I'm trying to write a plotless novel, but it's at the moment it's a girl. She comes to London with her family, and it shows what happens to her as she grows up and navigates the early rave scene in London from the late 80s through to the 90s, and just what happens with this family. And it's a bit of a crime novel. It's a halfway point now. So
Family from where?
from North Cyprus, yeah. But it's not just it's the main protagonist is much more Turkish, and so it's also looking at the repercussions of growing up being mixed race and how the Turkish community sort of impacted upon this person's life growing up.
Well, keep an eye out for that one.
Thank you. Nearly there, nearly finished.
Can I just ask the lady, sorry I've forgotten her name. Kate, hello Kate.
Yeah.
You said that you live in Amsterdam now.
Yes.
And do you have your inspiration from both England and Amsterdam? And if
Yes.
so, what is the difference that you've noticed?
The difference, well, there are lots of differences, I think, in the countries. I mean, I think, don't shoot me for saying this, but Holland is a much more civil society than England is at the moment. But I guess, I don't know where I get my inspiration from. I mean, I only started writing when I only started being published when I was nearly 60. And I write often, probably too often. And I don't know how you would describe what I write about. I like to include, not deliberately, but because I think it matters, political and current affairs in my poems, but as far as possible to humanise them. And of course, relationships matter, And these days, an awful lot of poetry gets written, and I'm one of those who writes it too, about what's happening to the natural world. Did I answer your
Yes,
question?
you have. Thank you very much.
So I'm aware that we might have to say goodbye to the conversation, but thank you for joining us. Did anyone else have a question from the audience? No?
Actually, yes, I do.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I'm terrible with names, yes. And bulking young poets. Yes. You talked a bit about rewriting. And you wrote poems, and then they sat in the drawer for a couple of years, and you rewrote them. It would be interesting to ask both of you about your tweaking, rewriting, coming back to things. Where do you start with a poem? How do you tweak? What way do you go around it? When you completely rewrite something, why do you know it needs to be done?
Good question.
Yeah.
Let's go first.
Well, they asked you, but my one word to you would be compost. What you do is you get it down as fast as you can in the notebook in your pocket, and then you work it and you rework it and you rework it and you rework it until you've actually found out what it is you're trying to say. And that's what I do. What about you?
Well, it's true what you say. Everyone has their own process that works for them. With me, similarly, but I also like to clean the poem. I find that often I'll chuck down a lot of images onto a page, and then when I look back at the poem afterwards, I can see what it is that doesn't fit anymore, it doesn't marry. And sometimes when I remove those images, it will become 2 poems, or 3 poems, or 4. And then I'll see that I was trying to talk about 16 different things in one poem. Which is equally good sometimes, but it's nice. I particularly like to extract what it is and just clean up the poems a little bit. And I think it's much more fun revising for me. I get quite stressed putting it on paper for the first time. I find it a bit, it's cathartic, but sometimes when something's cathartic, you can feel a little bit emotional, and like, for me when I write down, I'm just like, oh, okay, this is what I'm feeling right now. I'm not going to look at you again for another week at least. So I do like to come back when I'm less emotionally invested, and then think clearly and get it back into a normal shape.
I like your word clean, clean up. I think both composting things, sticking them in a rich bin full of rubbish to grow is pretty much essential. But I think the cleaning up, as you describe it, is also very essential. And quite often the poem and what the poem is going to say is far removed from what you thought you were going to say, because it has a life of its own and it takes off, and you have to respect that. Would you agree?
I definitely agree, because there's some subjects that I always wanted to write about, and I suppose I wanted my career as a poet to symbolise certain topics, and this is me, this is what I stand for, bam, 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 and then have many taglines that I could attach to myself that I was happy with. But my work doesn't agree with what my career plan is. And so it takes you into a different career. You become, perhaps more niche or maybe more sinister. And it just, you really have to respect where the work is taking you.
Yeah.
You really do.
Thank you, that was great.
Great question.
So one of the things that I was thinking about, I recently went to an event by Talia Randall called Here and Now, and we talked, it was kind of like a workshop / performance thing, so it was a space really to talk about women in the arts, and we talked a lot about sisterhood in a kind of all-encompassing way, and about the role of the kind economy and supporting women in, so like it made me think with Leah talking about flogging stuff, that is, you know, supporting women in that way as well. And one poet in particular talked about creating our own spaces and she wanted to start up a women's press, specifically for poetry. So I kind of wondered what you both thought about this kind of idea of the economy and how that relates to gender and how we can kind of support our other kind of sisters in that, in a kind of all-encompassing way.
I'll come back.
So, I've often found that with writing in general, and what makes me sad about the way the industry is geared, is that it's hard to even inspire somebody to pick up the pen, because they don't feel like there is a space for them already. So I often wonder about the amount of talent that's out there that's just not, it's just undiscovered, and often it's women, often it's people who are trans, it's just, and I find it quite difficult to be writing and be receiving certain opportunities and thinking, well, there are so many people who could easily fill these shoes. And I'm not saying it to put myself down, but more to just acknowledge that what we do is unique, but also we can easily share a stage with so many people. And I wonder how publishing houses could, you know, even a bracket like a women's press, that in itself can isolate quite a lot of people who wouldn't find themselves fitting into mainstream publishers. It's just, it is hard to market a business properly in order to attract the people who are most in need. So, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
It wasn't my question, it was somebody else's question. Your question. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it is difficult. I mean, if you set out deliberately to write poems about political, feminist, other issues, there's always the possibility that your poem's going to drop dead in its tracks. And you don't want that to happen. It has to come from another place. On the other hand, if you actually look at the cold figures, there are far fewer women poets published than there are men, and there are far few women prize winners than there are men prize winners of major prizes. Now that says something to us, doesn't it? And any creative publisher who can take that on board and shift the emphasis, like Cherry over there, who's one of them, and there are others, thank God, so much the better, I think. I don't know whether you'd agree with that, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, it doesn't necessarily have to be just a publishers for women, but a woman leading it. Like there's a new one that someone I know does mud press, and I don't know, I think it's just anthologies that she does rather than collections. I'm not sure what her plans are. But yeah, just being able to take that kind of position of what, you know, a gatekeeper, and building up that kind of reputation so that everyone wants to be published by you, and it just so happens that you're a woman and you're wanting to champion women's voices as well.
Indeed.
So I think we'll just maybe have one or two more questions. One of the things that was kind of wondering is, assuming that you do identify yourself as a feminist or aligned with feminism, when did you kind of come to that realization, or that you realized there was a kind of inequality in some way?
I'm trying to remember. I mean, I grew up, I was born in 1938, okay? I didn't grow up during the war, I was a child during the war. When I was at school, the whole issue of, for example, lesbianism was hidden under 17 cloaks belonging to the nuns. They used to say to me and my best friend, you wouldn't want to do anything unfresh. Well, I might have done if I'd only known what unfresh was. So it wasn't until I got into my sort of flares in the, what would it be, the early 60s, that I began to have what you might call anything like an informed consciousness about the position of women, the position of gay women in particular, of lesbians, and began to form some kind of life, if you like, meaning out of that. So it was a slow process. And I imagine it was awfully much the same for a lot of people who were born when I was, but you were born a lot later, so tell us.
So the first time I really understood the word feminist was my parents are separated. I went to stay with my dad, and I was about 12 years old. I never go and stay with my dad. I hated going there. I used to beg my mum not to send me. But I did. I went this weekend, and he put a sack of potatoes in front of me, and he said, well, we've got to check now whether your mum's raised you properly. And come on, let me see if you can peel a potato. And I couldn't. I mean, I think it's like, well, I haven't heard of a 12-year-old girl who can't peel a potato. This is very unusual. Are you a feminist or something? And I thought, well, maybe. if this is what a feminist is,
That's a great story. Oh my god.
Swiftly learned to peel a potato though. It was,
Wow.
it took some time to refuse to peel potatoes.
And then, I don't know if anyone else has any more questions. My last question was just more about kind of a similar question, but more about poetry and how you actually got into sort of sharing your poetry on page, on stage, and I guess kind of working towards kind of taking it seriously, I guess, as an art form and something, a craft that you do.
Well, I have to confess that my English teacher was in love with me, and she used to give me a letter every day which she pulled from her sleeve and handed to a friend of mine who handed it to me. And I have to say too, it was she who made me think that perhaps I could be a poet. I'd written poetry since I was able to hold a pen. But I didn't expect it to go anywhere or do anything. Much, much later, I was at a book launch at the Silver Moon bookshop of sad decline. It's gone now, in Tottenham Court Road, I think it was. Yes. And just on the off chance and in sheer naivety, I printed out 10 of my poems and I stuffed them, as it were, into my vest. And I was introduced to Lillian Moen. Does anybody know Lillian Moen, have heard of her? She founded the wonderful Only Women Press. And I said to her, oh, I said, do you publish poetry? Well, come on, you know, what a thing to ask somebody who's published every known feminist poet in history. Yes, she said. I said, oh, well, could I give you these? Yes. But the next day when I got home, there was a little red light blinking on the answer phone. And Lillian was at the other end saying, I want to do a book, I want to do a book. And that was the beginning for me.
Oh, wow.
But it's not how you're supposed to do it, I think.
But that's not how it works, is it?
So inspiring.
Amazing.
So the first time I thought of myself as a poet, well, it took me a long time to think of myself as a poet because I remember at school everyone used to write bars and they'd pass them across the classroom and we'd be like, you know, if you were good at, you know, rapping or at least doing anything that was vaguely resembling that, you could lift your words off the page and people would enjoy it and, you know, you'd know that you were good at writing, or so that's how I felt. So I felt, oh, they're stuck on the page, no one's really resonating with what it is that I'm writing. So I stopped writing poetry because I kept writing it for quite a long time and I didn't feel like it was being, you know, it was finding a home. And then I went to university and I met lots of people there who wrote, and I still didn't really want to show them my work anymore because I felt a bit daunted by lifting it off the page again. But then I finished university and I heard about the Barbican Young Poets programme. And I just, off chance, while I was in Cyprus, I heard about this programme. It's, you know, up to the age of 25, you can send in 3 poems and then they will pick you and they'll teach you. And I thought, that sounds great. Where's the Barbican? Don't know about that.
Yeah.
So it was while I was writing some of the poems that became what I performed here today. I sent a few in. They asked me, one of the questions was, who's your favourite poet? And I thought, no idea. I said Ruby Kaur, who I can't say I like very much anymore, unfortunately, but she's famous for, she posts her poems on Instagram, and these short little snippets that are quite universally appealing. And so I wrote that, and I got into the programme after 3 years of applying. And when I got into the programme, it was only last October. So since then, I started to fully just tell people I'm a writer, this is what I do. But the last year has been really exciting and beautiful to meet so many people like yourself who are very inspiring and share such meaningful words, and it just makes you feel like you're engaging with the emotion that's just, it's bubbling under the surface, especially with what's happening in the climate right now. I just think it's very beautiful to be around people who are enjoying literature, around people who are enjoying being in a room like this and just talking about how they feel.
Yeah, well, don't doubt for a minute, you're a poet.
Right, so even though I think there's still plenty more conversations that we could be having, I think that we'll have to wrap things up. So thank you both very much for your contribution. So now we're going to have the open mic again. So yeah, if you want to take your seats again, and again I'm going to do another poem of mine just to warm things back up again with the poetry.
Great.
One plan. So yeah, again, I kind of picked a poem that I'm going to do next because I realised that quite a few of these are like about my ex, and I just thought I don't really want to be just doing poems. Hopefully this one's not. I haven't properly read it through. So yeah, this is kind of was inspired when I can't even remember entirely, but it was about someone was talking about the concept of love at first sight, and I think it was at some event or something where people were talking about that. And anyway, this kind of goes through my thoughts, so I won't say much more. I wonder what bell hooks would say all about love at first sight. When mentioned, I scoff silently, like love could exist between the meeting of two pairs of eyes. Yeah, right. It is just lust. Just physical and sensual, but then I wonder if love and pain cannot coexist. If love hurts, it won't work. If love doesn't know whether it loves or not. If love that is long is that love's biggest achievement, then maybe that first glance is the truest love you will ever find. Maybe that moment existed between many souls, and whatever took its place over the years is just liking the attention, or just feeling too attached, or just wondering how to look a stranger in the eyes again. So I think that still had elements of the breakup, which is why I was flinging the pages around. Go away. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the rest of the open mic. So next up we've got Sue Johns reading some poems from her new pamphlet, Rented, Poems on Prostitution and Dependency. Please welcome Sue Johns.